This video is about space colonization. Rockets will be the main way that we colonize space. For the near future, the rockets that we use will be very similar to the ones that we have right now. They will most likely be reusable rockets like the ones that SpaceX has, simply because those are much cheaper to use. Now, eventually, however, we may end up building nuclear fusion rockets. Now, nuclear fusion is a very advanced form of nuclear energy which can generate multiple times more power than regular nuclear power that we have than regular nuclear power plants that we have right now. Now, this form of generating energy is still being worked on. It's still it has not been properly developed yet. But once it is developed, it can be used on rockets. In fact, that is one of the main uses that it will have in the future. There are many reasons for colonizing space. For example, we want to preserve human civilization, preserve the human race, and one great way to do that is to colonize space, because we will have people living on other planets. So if something happens to Earth, then the people there will be safe. But more importantly, that we can work together to prevent threats towards Earth, for example, deflecting asteroids. There are lots of resources in space. Places like asteroids have large amounts of metals and minerals that we will want on Earth, and for that reason, there is a lot of money to be made in space. Next, we will not harm anyone by going out to space. There is no one else in space, at least not in our solar system. So this is not like old imperialism where countries conquered other countries. This is completely different, since expanding into space will not be threatening to anyone. The next reason is reducing overpopulation. The Earth will soon have a lot more people on it, and once we have nuclear fusion energy, we can build very large rockets, rockets that are much larger and faster than the ones we have right now. And those rockets could be used to send large amounts of people who, of course, the large amounts of people who want to leave Earth, could be used to send them all to other planets, which could reduce the strain on Earth. Next, we simply want to see what is out there in space. There are many places in space that are completely different from Earth, and we want to study them, see what they are like. Next, overabundance. This is similar to resources. There is so much resources in space that there really will not be any conflicts there, not anytime soon at least. We also simply want to spread life, because why not? It will make those places more pleasant. And next, lastly, colonizing space, and more importantly advancing space travel in general, will help technology develop. There are many different technologies that have already been developed, partially or completely as a result of space travel. As this becomes even more advanced, it's not hard to imagine that more technologies and new methods of building things can be developed out there. The goal of space colonization is to get people to live permanently in space, large amounts of people, by setting up settlements and infrastructure. Colonists will use the resources that are near them, the local resources that are available to them. And this simply means that they are self-sufficient. They don't rely on Earth to send things to them. Our hope is that these settlements will grow into cities and attract more people. Space colonization will be assisted by space tourism and space mining, which are two different industries that can help bring attention and money to space colonization. Building a colony is a long and delicate process. First, you would need to send tools and robots there that would begin to construct a base by themselves. They would be programmed to do that before any people even arrive. Water will be a very important resource in space because space is generally a very dry place, but there is still plenty of water that can be found in the form of water ice. On places like the Moon and Mars, the soil, called regolith, can be processed for building shelters, building materials, for example, a similar version of concrete, or for simply growing food. This regolith would need to be processed, but it would still be useful. To defend from the sun's cosmic radiation, which, since these places do not have large magnetic fields like Earth does, they would not be able to properly defend themselves from that. Buildings might either be underground or would be surrounded or would have a layer of water inside of their walls in order to shield themselves from radiation. Solar power will be the primary way of generating electricity, at least until nuclear fusion becomes easy enough to build or send into space. Now, people who are living in a colony will be living in a place completely different from Earth. The conditions are completely hostile to life. They have little to no radiation, as I said, from cosmic radiation from the sun. The low gravity will cause many problems. For example, colonists will face health issues that mainly include the body weakening and the body being unable to balance itself properly. These include things like it's called muscle atrophy, in which, since the muscles are not being used much anymore, they basically shrink and a person becomes physically weaker. People could have difficulty balancing. They could lose their sense of taste and smell. Since the heart does not need to work as hard anymore, it could become weaker, which could lead to low blood pressure and less blood flowing to the brain. So basically many different problems. There have been proposals on how to solve these problems, and one of the more radical ones is to genetically modify humans. This is a new topic that has gained a lot of attention, and many people have strong opinions about it, mainly because of how it can be misused. But in this case, genetically modifying people could be very important to suit them up for surviving these conditions. Then there are also mental problems that the colonists will face. These people, at least in the early stages of the colony, which will be for the next few decades, they will be living with a few dozen or at most a few hundred people, and that's in a very large colony. And since they're living with a limited amount of people, they will probably come into conflict with each other, and being isolated from Earth and only having those people to interact with could put a severe strain on them. They will not be able to talk to Earth very well because light from at those distances will take a much longer amount of time to travel than it does here on Earth, because Earth is very small compared to the distances in space. A simple message from Earth to Mars will take minutes to get to Mars, and then the reply would again take minutes. So because of that, the colonists could feel very isolated, which could put a strain on their minds. The development of a colony will occur as the colony grows. As more people move to a colony, it will end up needing more resources, but it will also have more people to work. The people who are moving to these space colonies will be very skilled people. There'll be people like scientists and engineers, so they will know how to do it. So there will not be much of a problem with that. Once nuclear fusion powered spacecraft become once these spacecraft are built, since they are very large and fast, they will allow for much larger amounts of people to go to these colonies, even if they cannot, say, take off from Earth. Which that may be possible because the thrust from a nuclear fusion powered rocket would be so large that it would simply burn everything around it. So even if these spacecraft need to be built in space, they will make things much easier for colonies, since they will allow for the greater transfer of people and goods. These colonies will eventually be able to branch out and diversify themselves, diversify their economies, maybe even start exporting resources, start making their own inventions. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned some things about the basics of space colonization. Thank you, and please subscribe.